I'd like to open up the meeting to anybody who has any questions at this point. Ms. Chili.
I don't have a question, I have a statement.
Come up and read it.
Cecilia Chili, Sassafras Place, Gillette. Last meeting was very interesting, especially Mr. Vitarera's response to Ms. Geneviese's question concerning the FRAP committee. Yes, Mr. Sando did suggest this committee last year. Matter of fact, he submitted a document outlining the committee and a number of others to Mr. Vitarera, Mr. Collins, and Ms. Geneviese on November 26, 2005. He also provided them an update on November 30th, 2005. When I spoke to Ms. Geneviese, I requested a copy of that. In reviewing the document, it's obvious Mr. Sando had done considerable work researching and creating it, and has some reasonable ideas in it. I have no problem with a citizen taking the time and initiative to make suggestions to elected officials. But I do have a problem with the elected official taking the information and passing it off as his own work. Mr. Vitarera may have drafted the resolution on the morning of January 3rd, but the work was done by Mr. Sando a year earlier and lifted right out of the Dennis Sando playbook. It's strange that the information about this could not be provided to Mr. Collins or Ms. Geneviese prior to the meeting. And I'd like to ask, Mr. Briggs, were you aware of the formation of the FRAP committee?
Yeah, I knew there was a FRAP committee because I took classes, and it was actually a prominent component of the class for finance that it's recommended.
So were you aware that there was going to be a FRAP committee here in town?
I knew it was a consideration, yes.
Did you know that the resolution was going to be submitted?
I didn't know the date it was going to be submitted, no.
Okay. Mr. Aronio, were you aware of the FRAP committee prior to the reorg meeting?
The FRAP committee is something that I've been talking to our elected officials about for about the last 3.5 years. I spoke with Ms. Geneviese while she was running for office about it. I spoke with Mr. Vitarera Mayor Vitarera, when he was running for office. It's something that we campaigned heavily on, and I'm proud that we implemented that FRAP committee. Thank you.
Okay. However, what I find most disturbing about the document that Mr. Sando submitted is the cynical, vindictive tone. And just let me read a portion of it. This concerns the FRAP committee. We can't expect the township committee members to see all the opportunities for sweeping reform. As long as managerial employees have a mindset that puts 95% of the budget off limits. Further, the township committee should not be in an adversarial position with the staff over the budget from day one. The township committee's pledge to get the tax increases under control does not mean they have to do it by themselves with only their own skills to call upon. After all, the township committee is up against seasoned professionals, all of whom have years of practice and lots of certificates to hide behind. The township committee, sum total, has 5 years in office and no accountants. I propose a handful of budget hawks to conduct the budget discussions with the department heads. Then the township committee can come in and meet them halfway a month later. The staff will think the township committee is more reasonable than the FRAP members. The public will benefit from knowing that extra eyes were on the budget process from the beginning. There are only 10 weeks available before the budget is introduced in early March. Appointing such a committee to assist during that period is an easy way to hit the ground running. The whole process gets extra press because it's so novel. But obviously it's not novel. Others are doing it. FRAC can recommend public meetings to discuss and gather community input on the more radical of their proposals. The meetings themselves would gather press attention. And if it fails, then it can be dismissed the following year as our best and strongest shot, right out of the gate. I find this attitude to be almost unspeakable. They're using both the volunteers on the committees, the employees, and the public for their own cynical ends. Just who do you think you are? Mr. Vitarera obviously pointed out to me at the last meeting that the spoils belong to the victor. But we're not barbarians, and you're not dictators. Mr. Sandow likes to use the term lemmings, the reputation of lemmings being mindless creatures who will unhesitantly run off a cliff heedless of the danger. Mr. Sandow has used this term to describe senior citizens in this town. But if you ask me, he has found the lemmings on this committee, and they are allowing him to lead them. That is a very comfortable position for Mr. Sandow. He doesn't have to be elected. He has no accountability to the public. But remember, you're elected and you're accountable. I would note that the Communications Committee is also a part of this document. And in addition, he has suggested a Police Community Relations Advisory Committee. And I'd like to read something from that.
Do you have much more, Ms. Chili? Because we're well past 5 minutes now.
You didn't have a time limit on this one.
Excuse me?
You didn't have a time limit.
It's right in the agenda, Ms. Chili.
It's on the second portion. The committee shall recommend to the
Excuse
township...
me. It's on the agenda.
It's on the second
I'm
floor.
asking you if you have much more.
But that is for the second one, not for the first one.
No,
The
ma'am.
town- Excuse me.
Ma'am, it's
I
just-
don't see it on the agenda for...
I'm not trying to, interrupt you, but I'm asking you a question. Would you
May I
like to?
finish?
Yes, if you're not going to drag this on for much
The-
longer.
It
Other
would be too
people
much
have
longer.
a time-
Trust me.
Opportunity to speak. Go ahead.
Now, has that been deducted from my time?
Please go ahead.
The committee shall recommend to the Township Committee and the Chief of Police additional initiatives to improve, oh, I'm sorry, that's not the piece I wanted to read. There are quite a number. There are 3 pages for the Police Committee. The opportunity here for the Police Committee is to appoint residents, at least 5 residents, any of whom might have a personal grudge against the police department. I want to note that Mr. Sandow has made a number of disparaging remarks in this as well about volunteers, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to name them. I don't know what Mr. Sandow's agenda is, but it's disturbing that members of this committee are allowing him to dictate to them and to be a shadow government here. I don't think this is what the town expected when they voted for you. I hope you remember the public has put its trust in you and elected you as their officials. And you're abusing it by delegating authority to Mr. Sandow and using former officials of this town to do your dirty work and be your scapegoats on this PrAC committee. I think it's deplorable. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't need a lecture from you on civics, Mr. Vibrera.
Thank you.
Thank you.